She posted a reel saying, "Never stay loyal to someone who can't elevate your lifestyle," right after leaving me for a man with luxury cars and designer watches. I stayed completely silent online. Months later, she deleted the video after federal investigators raided his house, and my quiet business started expanding nationwide instead. "You're a good man," Kiera said, not even looking up from her phone. She laughed softly at something on the screen. "But good men don't upgrade lives." I stood in the kitchen doorway holding 2 cups of coffee. One for her, one for me. I'd woken up early to make them the way she liked. Oat milk, 2 sugars, that specific brand of vanilla creamer she'd asked me to order online 3 weeks ago. She didn't notice. She was too busy scrolling through comments on someone else's reel. A man standing next to a white Bentley. A man wearing a watch that probably cost more than my entire savings account. I set her coffee on the counter without saying anything. She didn't look up, and I stood there for a moment, just long enough to understand something had already shifted between us. I just didn't know how far yet. Looking back now, that Tuesday morning in our Jersey City apartment was the beginning of the end. I didn't argue, didn't ask questions, just carried my coffee to the living room and sat quietly with the weight of what she'd just said. 3 months later, federal investigators would surround the mansion of the man she chose over me. The reel she posted would disappear overnight, and I'd be on a phone call with a business partner in Atlanta finalizing a contract that would change everything I'd been quietly building. But that morning, I just drank my coffee and said nothing. I didn't realize it then, but that moment changed everything. Not because of what she said, but because of how she said it. Like loyalty had become something embarrassing. Like choosing a stable man who worked hard and kept his word was somehow a character flaw. Kiera and I had been together for 4 years. 4 years of building something real. Or at least what I thought was real. She knew me before the business had any traction. She knew me when I was working 12-hour days and coming home smelling like warehouse equipment. She knew me when I ate rice and chicken 5 nights a week because every extra dollar went back into what I was building. And I thought she respected that. I genuinely believed she understood the difference between where I was and where I was going. But somewhere in the last 8 months, and I can pinpoint it to almost the exact week, something changed in her. Her phone started filling with different content. Luxury travel influencers. Women posting from private yachts in the Mediterranean. Men flashing designer everything. Captions about energy and elevation and knowing your worth. And slowly, quietly, Kiera started measuring our life against those images. Started looking at my Honda like it was a personal insult. Started sighing at the restaurants I chose. Started asking questions that weren't really questions. Don't you think we should be further along by now? I just feel like we're not moving fast enough. Some people our age are already living completely differently. I'd answer calmly. Talk about the business plan, the timeline, the equity we were building. And she'd nod, but her eyes were somewhere else. If you enjoy real stories like this, subscribe, because what happened next changed everything for me. I should tell you a little about where we were at that point. I was 29. Kiera was 27. We'd been living together in Jersey City for almost 2 years, a decent 2-bedroom I'd found during a period when the business was showing real early promise. I ran a logistics and fulfillment operation. Small, maybe 12 employees at the peak of that year, but profitable, debt-managed, and growing steadily in a direction that made sense. Not flashy, not the kind of thing you could make a reel about, but real. Kiera worked in marketing for a mid-sized beauty brand in Manhattan. Good job, decent salary. She was smart, creative, and early in our relationship, deeply grounded. That was what I loved most about her. She used to laugh at people who chased image over substance. Used to roll her eyes at the influencer culture she was now consuming 12 hours a day. I don't know exactly when it flipped, but it did. And by the time I started noticing, the flip had already been complete for a while. The first time I heard the name Warren was in February. Kiera mentioned him casually, almost too casually. This guy Warren spoke at a brand event I went to last week. He's an import-export, has these insane connections. I was half watching a game. Yeah? What kind of connections? Like, international. He talked about moving product through 3 different countries in the same week. He had this energy, like nothing was ever a problem for him. I nodded, kept watching the game. Looking back, that should have been my warning. Not because she mentioned another man, but because of the specific way she described him. Not his intelligence, not his character, his energy, the way problems didn't seem to touch him. That was the language of someone who had already been thinking about a person for a while before saying their name out loud. I ignored it. filed it away somewhere I didn't have to look at, and went back to the game. March came, and the mentions of Warren became more frequent. Warren was at this event I covered for work. Warren has this insane apartment in Tribeca, apparently. Floor-to-ceiling windows. Warren knows people who know people. Each mention was small, deniable, just information, technically, but information delivered with a specific energy I recognized somewhere deep in my gut. Admiration she used to have for me. One evening I came home later than usual. Big operational problem with a supplier. The kind of thing that required 3 hours of phone calls and a complete rerouting of a weekly delivery schedule. I was tired, still in work clothes. Kiera was on the couch looking incredible. Dressed up, full makeup. I stopped at the door. Going somewhere. Just a networking thing for work. Rooftop event in Manhattan. Tonight. I mentioned it last week. She didn't look up. You probably forgot. Maybe I had. I was managing a lot. Who's going to be there? People from work. Some brands. Some investors. She picked up her bag. Adjusted her earrings in the hallway mirror. Don't wait up. And she left. I stood in my kitchen for a long moment. Then I heated up leftovers. And got back to the supplier emails. I told myself it was nothing. I told myself I was being paranoid. But there was something strange about that evening. Something I noticed that I didn't want to name yet. April is when the distance became impossible to ignore. She started sleeping facing away from me. Started laughing at things on her phone she wouldn't share. Started wearing perfume on Tuesday afternoons when she didn't have anything scheduled. I asked once, "You seem different lately." She looked up with this expression I hadn't seen before. Like the question slightly irritated her. Different how? I don't know. Distant. She exhaled slowly. I'm not distant. I'm just thinking about what I want my life to look like. Is that not allowed? Of course it is. Then why do you make it feel like a problem? I didn't answer that. Because I didn't have an answer. Or rather, I had an answer, but saying it out loud would have started a conversation I wasn't sure I was ready to finish. So I let it sit. The way I let a lot of things sit during that period. At the time, I ignored it. But what I should have understood was that when someone starts talking about what they want their life to look like while standing right next to you, they're usually picturing that life without you in it. The first time I actually saw Warren was at a dinner Kiera brought me to in early May. A mutual friend's birthday. Some rented-out private room at a restaurant in Midtown. Warren walked in 20 minutes late, which, I would come to understand, was a personality trait. He was tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in a way that announced money before he even opened his mouth. Dark-fitted suit, no tie, a watch I recognized as a Patek Philippe from across the room. He moved like the world owed him the space he occupied, greeted people by name, laughed loudly, ordered bottles without asking prices. And when he got to our section of the table, he shook my hand with the particular firmness of a man who wants you to feel the handshake. This is him, he said to Kiera, smiling. Not at me. At Kiera. Like I was something she'd described earlier, and he was confirming the description. She smiled back. Yeah, this is him. I held his eye contact for a second longer than was comfortable. Then I smiled, sat down, and spent the next 3 hours watching him perform. That was the only word for it. Performance. Every story he told ended with a number or a location designed to impress. Every sentence had weight because he delivered it that way. He mentioned Cannes. He mentioned a car collection. He mentioned a real estate deal in Dubai that fell through, but honestly, I wasn't that interested anyway. And the table loved it. Especially Kiera. I watched her laugh at things he said. Watched her lean slightly forward when he spoke. Watched her check to see if I was watching. I was. And I said nothing. But there was something about Warren that didn't sit right. Something behind the performance. I couldn't place it that night. But it was there. Something strange in the way he deflected specific questions. The way he changed the subject when someone asked what company he actually ran. The way his eyes went flat for a half second whenever someone got too precise. I noticed it. Nobody else seemed to. June arrived like a slow collapse. Kiera stopped asking about the business. Completely. For 4 years, every Sunday morning, she'd ask how things were going. What was moving? What I was worried about. It was one of those small intimacies I didn't realize I'd come to depend on until it disappeared. In June, she stopped asking. Started spending more time in Manhattan on weeknights. Started coming home with shopping bags from stores I recognized because of their prices. I didn't ask where the money was coming from. I should have. One night, I woke up at 2 a.m. and she wasn't in bed. I found her in the kitchen, typing on her phone with her screen brightness turned all the way down. She didn't hear me at first. I watched her for a few seconds. The focused expression, the quiet intensity. The way she smiled at something on the screen. Then she looked up. Couldn't sleep, she said immediately. Too immediately. Who are you talking to? Nobody. Just scrolling. She turned the phone face down on the counter. And I stood there in the kitchen at 2 a.m. understanding exactly what was happening. I just chose, one more time, not to say it. The actual conversation came on a Thursday evening in late June. No screaming. No dramatic build-up. She sat across from me at the kitchen table with her hands folded like she'd practiced this. I've been doing a lot of thinking, she started. I waited. I love you. I do. But I don't think we want the same things anymore. What things do you think I want? She paused. You want to build something slow. You want to be patient. And I respect that. I do. But I want to live now. I don't want to wait 5 years for a lifestyle I could have today. There it was. Out in the open. Finally. And you think Warren can give you that? She didn't deny it. Didn't flinch. Just held my eyes. He's already living the life I want to live. I nodded slowly. Stood up from the table. Walked to the window. Looked out at the Jersey City skyline for a long moment. Then I turned around. Okay. She blinked. Okay. Yeah. Okay. I think she expected a fight. Expected me to beg or argue or break down. Instead, I went to the bedroom. Started pulling a bag from the closet. She followed me to the doorway. That's it. Just okay. What do you want me to say, Kiera? I don't know. Something. I looked at her. You've already made your decision. What would talking change? She had no answer for that. I packed what I needed for a few days. Grabbed my laptop and my work files. Looked around the apartment one last time. And walked out. I stayed at my friend Darnell's place in Brooklyn for 2 weeks while I figured out the next step. Darnell didn't ask a lot of questions. That was what I needed. He'd just pour a drink, sit across from me, and say things like, what's the next move? Instead of how are you feeling? I appreciated that more than I could explain. The first week was hard. I won't pretend it wasn't. For years doesn't disappear cleanly just because you pack a bag and walk out. I'd reach for my phone to text her something stupid. A news article we would have laughed at. A work update she'd asked about weeks ago. A reminder about something she'd left unfinished. Then I'd remember. Put the phone down. Go back to work. Work was what saved me. Not in a motivational speech way. Just in the simple mechanical way that having something to focus on keeps you from spiraling. I had a supplier issue in the Midwest that needed resolving. I had a potential contract with a regional retail chain that required proposal refinement. I had 3 employees who needed decisions made by end of week. So I made decisions. I resolved problems. I worked. And slowly, one day at a time, the weight shifted from grief to something else. Clarity, maybe. Or at least the beginning of it. Kiera posted the reel on a Saturday afternoon in early August. I know the exact day because Darnell called me about it before I'd even seen it. Yo. She posted something. I was in the middle of reviewing a shipping manifest. What did she post? Just look at it. I put him on hold. Found her profile. And there it was. A video of her on what looked like a rooftop deck. Views of Manhattan in the background. Champagne glass in hand. New dress. New jewelry. New energy. And the caption. Never stay loyal to someone who can't elevate your lifestyle. With 847 likes and climbing. I read it twice. Then I put my phone face down on the desk. Went back to the shipping manifest. Picked up Darnell's call. You see it? Yeah. You good? Yeah. You want to say something back? I'll draft it with you. We can. No. Silence. You sure? I'm sure. And I was. Not because I didn't feel it. I felt it. The specific humiliation of being publicly reduced to a reason someone left. The way 847 people were nodding along to the idea that my 4 years of loyalty were a lifestyle deficiency. I felt all of it. But I also understood something in that moment with a clarity I hadn't had before. Anything I said online would become content. My pain would become her engagement. My response would prove she could affect me. My silence was the only thing she couldn't use. So I stayed silent, put my phone in my drawer, and finished the shipping manifest. What I didn't post in August, that I'd signed a new contract with a regional grocery chain that tripled my monthly distribution volume, that I'd quietly moved into a 1-bedroom in Hoboken that was modest, but mine, completely mine, that I'd had 3 separate conversations with potential investors who'd been watching my operation for almost a year, that Darnell, who worked in commercial real estate, had connected me with a developer who needed a reliable fulfillment partner for a new retail concept they were expanding across the Mid-Atlantic. None of that went online. No captions, no reels, no flex, just work. Meanwhile, Kiera's page became a documentation of a lifestyle. Posts from rooftops. Posts from what appeared to be a private villa somewhere tropical. A photo of her wrist next to Warren's watch. A photo of the passenger seat of a car I recognized as a Rolls-Royce Ghost. Captions about finally living and choosing alignment and knowing your worth. Mutual friends sent me screenshots sometimes. I'd look, put the phone down, go back to work. There was something about Warren's life that should have raised more flags than it did, even for her. The villa trip that lasted 11 days with no mention of work. The car collection that seemed to rotate monthly. The import-export business that nobody could find online with any specificity. The way he paid for things. Always cash. Always in person. Always without receipts. But she wasn't looking for flags. She was looking for content. And he was giving her plenty of it. I heard the first real rumor in October. Not from Kiera. From a man named Carlton who ran an event hosting company and moved in overlapping circles. Carlton called me out of nowhere. Hey, I know you and Kiera aren't together anymore. That's not why I'm calling. What's up? You know that Warren guy she's with? I waited. Some people I know are saying there's movement around him. Federal kind of movement. I was quiet for a second. What kind? The financial kind. Import-export is a convenient label for a lot of things, if you catch my meaning. I caught his meaning. I don't know details, Carlton continued. But I'm hearing his name in conversations where you don't want your name. Just thought you should know. In case anyone connects anything back to you through her. I appreciate that. You're quiet about everything. I respect that. Just watch yourself. We hung up. I sat with that information for a long time. I didn't reach out to Kiera. Didn't warn her. Didn't feel like it was my place anymore. She'd made a choice. Adults live with choices. What I did do was make sure my business had absolutely zero overlap with anything connected to Warren. Quietly. Carefully. The way I did most things. November. The business had its best month since I'd started it. New contracts were producing real volume. I brought on 4 additional employees. The investor conversations had moved from exploratory to serious. One group in particular, based out of Atlanta, was showing genuine commitment to what I was building. I flew to Atlanta twice that month. Met with people. Sat in rooms where people spoke about my operation with the language of something worth investing in. I didn't post any of it. Didn't change my profile. Didn't update anything publicly. Just kept working. One evening in Atlanta, I was having dinner alone at a restaurant near my hotel when my phone buzzed. A text from a number I didn't recognize. Then I read it. He got raided today? I don't know what to do. I stared at it for a long moment. Then typed back. Who is this? 3 dots appeared. Kiera. I set the phone on the table, looked at my food, picked up my fork, and finished dinner. I didn't respond that night, or the next morning. I thought about it. Genuinely. Part of me, the part that had loved her for 4 years, that had made her coffee with oat milk and 2 sugars, that had woken up next to her and believed we were building something. That part wanted to respond. But a quieter, clearer part understood something important. She wasn't reaching out because she missed me. She was reaching out because the structure she'd chosen had collapsed and she needed somewhere stable to land. And I had spent the last 6 months becoming exactly that kind of stable. Not for her. For myself. For my company. For the people I employed. And extending that stability to someone who'd publicly reduced me to a lifestyle deficiency wasn't something I was willing to do. So I didn't respond. I flew back to Jersey the next morning. Went directly to the office. And started the week. The story of what happened with Warren came out in pieces over the following weeks. Carlton filled me in on some of it. Other parts one heard through mutual circles. The import-export business was a layered front. Multiple shell companies. Financial movement across borders that had drawn scrutiny for over a year before the raid. The cars were largely leased through entities that were part of the investigation. The Tribeca apartment, rented under a business name now frozen. The watches, the trips, the bottles. All of it funded through channels that were now the subject of federal inquiry. The mansion people kept referencing wasn't even his primary residence. It was a property he'd been using that belonged to an associate. The whole thing was a performance. An expensive, meticulously maintained performance. And Kiera had been in the front row. The reel disappeared on a Wednesday morning in early December. I only noticed because Darnell texted me a screenshot he'd taken before it went down with the simple message. Gone. I looked at the screenshot. 847 likes had become over 4,000 by the time it was deleted. The caption about never staying loyal to someone who can't elevate your lifestyle. Gone. Like it had never been posted. I put the phone in my pocket. Walked into a meeting with the Atlanta investment group. and we finalized the terms of a partnership that would fund the next phase of my expansion, 3 new distribution hubs, 2 of which would be operational by spring. I found out later, through Carlton, who found out through someone else, that Kiera had quietly moved back in with her mother in early December. The apartment she'd been sharing with Warren had been flagged as part of the investigation. Nothing that touched her directly, as far as anyone knew. But the life she'd been building in that space, the rooftop views, the champagne, the passenger seat of the Ghost, all of it had to be vacated on 2 weeks' notice. I didn't feel triumphant when I heard that. I want to be honest about that. I didn't feel vindicated. What I felt was something quieter and harder to name. Sad maybe. Not for myself. For her. For the version of her I'd known before she started mistaking performance for substance. That woman. The one who used to roll her eyes at influencer culture and choose Sunday morning coffee conversations over any kind of social event. I genuinely loved that woman. The woman in the reel wasn't someone I recognized. And I think somewhere in the collapse of December, she was figuring that out too. What I want to tell you now, because this is the part that tends to get left out of stories like this, is what those 6 months of silence actually required. It's easy to say he stayed silent and focused. The reality was harder. There were nights in that Hoboken apartment where the only sound was the work I was doing, and it felt like discipline was the loneliest thing in the world. There were moments in meetings, presenting numbers I was proud of, where I wished she could see it, not out of spite, but out of the simple human impulse to share something good with someone you loved. There were mornings I scrolled past her posts before I could stop myself, looked at her standing in that life, and felt the specific ache of having been replaced. I'm not going to pretend those months were clean. They weren't. What I will say is that every time I felt that ache, I had a choice. React or refocus. React or refocus. Every single time, I chose refocus. Not because I was strong in some exceptional way, but because I understood, at a cellular level by that point, that my energy was the only currency I actually controlled. And I refused to spend it on someone who'd publicly cashed out of what we had. There's something else I need to say. Something I've only recently understood fully. I paid for a lot of what Kiera's career became during our 4 years. Not in a transactional way, just in the invisible way that happens when you love someone who's building something. When her company had layoffs and she freelanced for 8 months, my income covered the apartment. When she wanted to take a branding course that cost $3,000, I covered it without her asking twice. When she needed a professional portfolio website for a job application, I paid a developer I knew to build it. None of that was debt. I never thought of it as debt. It was just what you do for someone you love. But I've thought about it since. About how the version of Kiera who landed that marketing position, the professional, polished, confident version she presented to the world, had been quietly subsidized by the man she would later describe as someone who couldn't elevate her lifestyle. I don't say that to diminish her. She worked hard. She earned her success. But there's an invisibility to the support that stable, quiet men provide. We don't make reels about it. We don't post about it. We just do it. And when it's gone, nobody eulogizes it. They just count the watches of the man who replaced us. I ran into her once. February. A Sunday afternoon. I was coming out of a coffee place near Journal Square. I was there to meet with a potential hire, an operations manager I was bringing on for the expansion. She was standing outside with her younger sister. Both of them saw me at the same time. I was in a decent jacket. Clean. Rested. I'd put on a few pounds of muscle from the gym habit I'd rebuilt in November. I looked, I think, like someone who had been sleeping well. She looked like someone who hadn't. Not broken, just different. The easy confidence she'd had in August, the champagne and rooftop energy, that was gone. What was left was something more familiar. The version of her I'd known before the performance. Hey, I said. Simple. Neutral. Hey, she said. Her sister looked at me with an expression I understood but didn't engage with. A beat passed. You look good, Kiera said quietly. Thanks. How's the business? Good. Growing. She nodded slowly, like she was processing something. That's really good to hear. And I could tell she meant it. Whatever had happened in the past 8 months, there was a part of her, the real part, the part I'd known for 4 years, that was genuinely glad for me. I nodded. Take care of yourself, Kiera. She held my eyes for a second, said nothing, and I walked to my meeting. The Atlanta partnership went public in March. 3 distribution hubs, 22 employees, a logistics contract that would run for 5 years and anchor the next phase of everything I'd been building since I was working 12-hour days and eating rice and chicken 5 nights a week. I posted one thing about it, A single line on LinkedIn. No cars. No watches. No rooftops. Just a quiet announcement about a business that had grown slowly, honestly, and without anyone's permission. It got 214 likes, which was fine. I wasn't posting it for the likes. I've thought a lot about what I actually learned. Not in a motivational way, just practically. The quietest moves are usually the most powerful ones. Not because silence is some kind of strategy, but because when you're not performing, you're actually working. And work, over time, accumulates into something that no reel can fake. The other thing I've understood, and this one is harder to admit, is that Kiera wasn't entirely wrong about what she wanted. She wanted to live well. She wanted to feel like her life was moving. She wanted experiences and beauty in the sense that she was arriving somewhere. That's not shallow. That's human. Where she went wrong wasn't in what she wanted. It was in who she believed could give it to her. She looked at Warren's cars and counted them as proof. She looked at my spreadsheets and couldn't find a lifestyle in them yet. She chose the performance over the foundation. And the performance, as performances do, came down. The reel disappeared. My company didn't. She wanted a lifestyle. I was busy building a life. By the time she understood the difference, I was already somewhere she couldn't see from where she was standing. And I hadn't said a single word to get there.